Hello everybody, welcome back to American Textbook Reading. My name is Brian Stuart. In this lesson, Lesson 2, we're going to talk about the differences between living things and non-living things, okay? So we're going to talk about verses. Verses, VS, of course, means verses. Verses. In other words, we're going to talk about the differences between, and that's what we will discover. You will discover the differences here between living things and non-living things. So the differences between is like verses. What are the differences between living things, like this little baby here, this cute baby, and this cute teddy bear? What are the differences between living things and non-living things? First, let's look at living things. What are living things? Living things need water, air, and food to live. Living things need three things to live. They need water, air, and food. Animals and plants are living things. That's what living things need, okay? As opposed to non-living things. Non, of course, means not. Not living. Not living means that they're not alive, right? It means non-living things do not need water, air, or food. Rocks and water are examples of non-living things. They're not alive, right? They don't have bodies, right? They don't have parts that move, right? These are other examples of non-living things. A football, a basketball, a baseball. Those things are not alive, right? They don't live. They don't breathe. They don't reproduce. They are not living things. They are non-living things. All things, whether they're living or not living, they live in a place. What do we call that place? We call that place the environment. The environment. This is the place where a living thing lives. But of course, it's also the place where you can find many non-living things too. But an environment, usually we talk about, when we talk about living things, we talk about their environment and the relationship between living things and the environment. Survive means to continue living. Living things, of course, one of their main goals is to continue to survive, to continue to live. Continue living, to keep living, stay alive. They, of course, want to stay alive. So living things want to survive. A living thing needs water, air, and food to survive. If they don't have water, no air, no food, they cannot survive, right? In that case, they die, okay? If all those types of things die, then they are no longer, they go extinct. Look at this flower right here. This flower is growing up. It needs water, air, and food in order to survive. If you take away water, the flower will die. No air, the flower will die. No food, and the flower will die. So all living things need to survive. They need these things in order to keep living, to continue living. To grow. Of course, all living things grow. That's another thing about living things. Not only do they survive, they need to survive, they also need to grow. Living things change from very small babies to adults to very old, and then they die. This is what happens to living things. It's the cycle of life, right? The cycle of life. All living things grow through the cycle of life. Grow means to get bigger. That's the basic word, right? To grow, to get bigger. If you have food and water, you will grow, right? Food, water, and time, you will get bigger, right? All living things. This is a good example here. We can see different stages of the development of this plant. This plant, as it grows, it gets larger. Let's take a look at these plants here that are planted in this pot here. Let's take a look at how they grow. Wow, look at that. They're growing very quickly. Of course, this is a trick photography. This video was taken over a long period of time, but the plants are growing. They are getting bigger, They are growing in size. And of course, they're growing in age too. They are getting older. So when things grow, they get older. When you grow, you get older. So things grow, they get bigger, they also get older. And this is part of the cycle of life. Okay, let's talk about non-living things. A rock is an example of a non-living thing. A rock is a small and hard non-living thing. This, for example, is a rock. Now it says small, but of course some rocks can be big, right? But this little rock here that you can pick up off the ground, it's small, it's hard, right? It's very tough, and it does not live. This rock, it doesn't need water. It doesn't need food. It's not going to grow, right? It's not going to get bigger by itself if you give it food and water. That's crazy, right? So the rock will stay the same unless you hit it, unless water changes it somehow. But usually by itself, it will not grow. It will not change by itself. Now, nature, right? Nature is where all the things exist. Nature is the world of living and non-living things. So living and non-living things exist in nature. When you go out into nature, right, you have grass, you have trees, you have air, you have clouds, you have sunlight. Some of those things are living, some of those things are not living, non-living. But these all exist in nature. Nature is also the outside world. Safe. We have safe here. Safe is something is safe. There is no danger. And what this image is, this is an image of a turtle's shell. A turtle used to live here. It was safe when it was alive. It died, hopefully of old age, right? The shell kept it safe, but all things die. All things grow, they get bigger. Eventually, all things will die. That's part of the life cycle. So this shell, while the turtle was alive during its life, it protected the turtle. It kept it safe. To keep something safe. We can say this shell kept the turtle safe. If something is safe, there is no danger. He's safe. Whew, no danger. Don't worry. Okay, we've talked about living things and non-living things. Here we have another word, alive. Alive is associated with living things. Being alive means to be living, not dead. Okay, so here we see this fish. This fish is alive. It's moving around. Looks like it's breathing. So it is alive. But this fish will grow older. It has a cycle of life. All living things have the cycle of life. Someday this fish will die. And then when it dies, it will not be alive. So alive is the opposite of dead. These words are opposite. Alive, opposite, dead. And living things go through this. Living things are either alive or they are dead. Okay? Okay, here we have our chart showing us the differences between living things and non-living things. Living things versus non-living things. The differences between them. On this side we have living things. On this side we have non-living things. We have pictures showing the two different things, and we have a vocabulary, words and expressions to describe each thing. Over here we have living things. We have pictures of flowers, picture of a squirrel, picture of a tree. These are all living things. They are all alive. They all grow and they change, right? They get bigger. They all need air, food, water, and space. They need space to move around in. Okay, let's take a look at a video of a squirrel. Okay, he's a cute little guy. He's really cute, isn't he? Look at his hands. That's kind of funny, the way he uses his hands too. But this squirrel is alive, right? Whoa, you can see that he's live. He's moving very quickly. Sometimes he stops, but you can see how he moves. He needs space to move around in. He does need food. He's breathing, so he needs air, and he'll need water. Whoa, and there he goes. He's gone, right? So he needs space to move around in as well as food, air, and water. Now, what about non-living things? Non-living things. Here we have a picture of rocks. Here we have a picture of sky and clouds. So you could say air and water are non-living things. Here we have a picture of a statue, right? It's a huge statue. It's really a monument, right? These are all examples of non-living things. They're not alive. They never grow. They're never going to grow bigger, right? They're going to stay the same. They never need air, food, or water. They don't need air to breathe. They don't eat. They don't need food. They don't need water. They do need space, of course, but they don't need air, food, or water. Let's take a look at a video of non-living things. Here we have a video of, what is this? This is a type of rock. What type of rock? This is a mineral, right? This is but it's also a type of rock. It's a small rock, but it has some mineral parts to it, right? And it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful. The light reflects off it. It's shiny, but it's not alive. It doesn't move. It doesn't grow. It doesn't need food, doesn't need water, doesn't need air. It's going to stay the same for a very long time, unless you break it open, for example. But it's not going to change by itself. Okay, let's move on to the exercise. The exercise, we're matching the words to their definitions. The words that we have are grow, survive, environment. Environment. Okay, that's a difficult word. Environment. Rock, living things, and non-living things. Take a look at the first definition. Number one, things that do not need water, air, or food. So what things were we talking about that do not need? They don't need air, water, or food. The video of the rock, the mineral that we saw, that's an example. Is the mineral a living thing or a non-living thing? It's a non-living thing. Okay? So things that don't need water, air, or food are non-living things. Okay, good. Number two, a small and hard non-living thing. So again, remember that video that we saw, right? It's small and it's hard. It's a non-living thing. Which of these words fit that description? Well, of course, if you choose rock, you would be right. Rock is a small, hard, non-living thing. It doesn't live. It's not alive. Number three, to continue living, to keep living, to stay alive. What do we call that? We say that is survive, to survive. It's a verb, to survive, to continue living, to keep alive, to stay alive. To stay alive is to survive, continue to live. Talk about number four, to get bigger. When something gets bigger, especially by itself, if you give it food and water, it will get bigger. What is it doing? It is, of course, growing. To get bigger is to grow in size. Number five, the place where a living thing lives. Where is a place where a living thing lives? If you chose the environment, that's our difficult word there, the environment, that is the place where a living thing lives. Living things, of course, need space. They need a clean and good environment in which to live. And that's why it's important also to protect the environment. If the environment is protected, many living things can continue to stay alive. They can survive in the environment. But if we make the environment dirty, living things will die. They won't survive. Okay, number six, things that need water, air, and food to live. Things that need water, air, and food to live. That's the opposite of non-living things, right? That would be living things. And we are all living things. All animals and plants, those are living things. We need water, air, and food to continue to live, to survive, to live. We are living things. Those things are living things. Okay, let's move on. Here we have a chart showing the differences between living things and non-living things. What are some examples of living things and non-living things? Think about that. Think of the things that you can see in your room. Think of things that are in your house. Think of things that are outside your house on the street. What are some examples? Well, of course, in your house, you could probably find people. There's you, right? There's your sister or brother. There's your parents, right? Those are people. Outside your house in nature, you probably can see some birds, especially if it's spring outside, you can hear them singing. We can hear birds. Those are living things. Rabbit. A rabbit is also a living thing, right? It needs food, air, and water to grow. These are all animals, but plants are also living things. Types of plants, flowers. Flowers are living things, and trees are living things. What are some other examples? Maybe you can come up with grass. Grass is also a living thing. It's a type of plant. So living things, we could also divide these. Here, we could say living things are also animals, and they are also plants. Okay? These things are plants, these things are animals. Okay? So living things, you can also break it down into another grouping, animals and plants. So living things are animals and plants. All of these things need food, air, and water to survive, to continue living. Now, on the bottom, we have non-living things. These things are not alive. What do we have? What are some examples? If you go outside your house into a park or other natural area, you could probably find many rocks lying on the ground. Those are non-living things. In your house, or maybe right outside your house, do you have a bike? Many of you do. A bike, of course, is a non-living thing. We might think of it as a living thing. We might think of it as our friend, but it's not living, right? It's just a tool we use to get around. Clothes, the clothes that we're wearing, the clothes I'm wearing, the clothes you're wearing right now, they're not alive. That would be weird, wouldn't it? They're non-living. They don't live. A car. Your parents might have a car parked outside, right? That is a non-living thing. It's a machine. It's a tool, but it's a non-living thing. And finally, we have books. Again, books can be our friends, but again, they're not alive, right? We use books, we get enjoyment out of books, but they're not living. None of these things need water, air, or food in order to live or to grow. So they are non-living things. They are not alive. Let's move on. Here we have kind of an exercise that we need to talk about whether these things are living or non-living. What we need to do is we need to write L for living things. So if it's alive, if it's living, write L in the blank. If it's not living, write N, non-living. So write N in the blank if it's not alive. It's not living, non-living. Let's take a look at the first picture. We have a teddy bear. Now, of course, there are some movies you can see where teddy bears and dolls get up and dance, but that's just the movies, right? That's not reality, right? Do teddy bears need water, food, and air? Do they grow in size? No, they don't. So they are non-living things. We put N in the blank. They are non-living things. Here we see a picture of a cloud. It looks very peaceful, looks very nice. But does a cloud need air, water, and food to grow? No. Clouds will grow if there's more water. Sure, clouds do need water, that's true, but they don't need food, right? They don't need air to grow. They will not grow. They are not part of the life cycle. So again, clouds are non-living things. Down here in number 3, we have a picture of a bear. Looks like a very dangerous bear, big bear, right? Be careful. This bear is walking through a stream. It's moving, right? It needs water. It needs food. It needs air to breathe. It will change. This bear looks like an adult bear. A long time ago, it was a baby bear. So it grew into a very large bear. So is this bear living? You bet it is living. So we put L. It is a living thing. Now this is an animal. Over here, number 4, we have a picture of plants. This is a picture of many flowers. Flowers are plants. Do they need water? Do they need air? Do they need food? Sure they do. They are living things. They need those things in order to grow. Okay, so we have our wrap-up of living and non-living things, some different examples. Let's move on to our true or false questions. Circle T for true, F for false. First question. Non-living things need food and water to survive. We just looked at some examples of living things and non-living things. right? When we looked at the non-living things, we saw the cloud, right? It doesn't need food and water to survive, right? We saw the teddy bear. The teddy bear doesn't need food and water to survive, right? They'll be okay. So this is not true. This is false, right? If we change the sentence and we say living things need food and water to survive, that's true. But we have to change the sentence, so it's false. Number 2, living things grow and change. So think about that. That bear that we saw, does it grow and change? Sure. I said it grew from a baby into an adult bear. It grew. It changed. Do flowers grow and change? Sure they do. They start off as seeds and they grow into plants, adult plants. So living things grow and change. Yes, that is true. Absolutely. Number 3, the environment is where living things live. Is that true? We talked about environment. That's a difficult word. Think about where animals live. Think about where plants live. We call that the environment. And I told you about the importance of protecting the environment, keeping it clean, so that living things can be safe. They can live, they can continue to survive. So yeah, number 3 is true. The environment is where living things live. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. We'll take a short break and we'll come back and look at the reading. Okay, welcome back. Let's go over the reading passage. As usual, in the reading passage, we have our topic sentence. That's the first sentence of the reading passage here. And what does it say? It says, nature has many living and non-living things in it. So we're talking about nature, right? The environment in the outside world. If we go outside into the countryside or into a forest, that is nature. We can see there's 2 kinds of things there. 1, we have living things, and 2, we have non-living things. So living things and non-living things in nature. So basically this article, this passage, is going to talk about 2 different things that occur or exist in nature. First, we're going to talk about living things. Living things need food and water. Why? To survive, to keep living. So they want to keep living, they want to continue living, they want to survive, they want to grow. Food and water help living things to grow and to change. So things will change from babies to adults. Plants will change from seeds to very big trees in some cases. So living things will grow, they will get bigger, and they will change in their shape and especially in their size. That's about living things. What kinds of living things are there? Mammals, reptiles, birds, insects, amphibians, and fish are all living things. We talked about these things, right? So mammals, of course, are a type of animal, warm-blooded animal. Reptiles, cold-blooded animal. Birds is similar to reptiles, but birds fly. There are insects, amphibians, creatures that live in water and on land, and fish, animals that live in the water. These are all living things. People, you and I, are also living things. By the way, all of these things, we talked about this, all of these things here, what are they? There's 2 groups for living things. These are all called animals. These are all animals. All of these examples in this reading passage here, these are all animals. Of course, in the bottom we see people, rabbit, bird. These are not animals, right? These are plants. So all living things, remember, we can divide into 2 main groups, animals and plants. The place where a living thing lives is called its environment, right? Animals and plants exist in an environment. A living thing must be safe in its environment. So we saw the picture of the turtle shell, right? The turtle uses the shell to be safe in its environment. Many animals use homes or shelters to live or to be safe in their environment. We want to be safe in our environment. We build our own homes, right? But we need to be safe in our environment. Our environment also needs to be clean and healthy. We shouldn't pollute. We shouldn't throw away things or do something to our environment to make it dirty. Otherwise, we will not be safe, right? We need a clean environment to be safe. All living things are alive. So all animals, all plants, all living things are alive. They grow and they change over time. On the other hand, on the other side, we have non-living things. Non-living things, of course, are not alive. Non-living things do not need food or water, and they do not grow. Okay? So non-living things, they don't need those things. They're not going to grow. Living things need food and water to grow, but non-living things don't grow. They don't need food. They don't need water. Rocks and water are examples of non-living things. We also have many other examples we talked about before. A bicycle, a car, a rock, clothes, and books. All examples of non-living things. Let's take a look at a video of a living thing and a non-living thing. Let's take a look at the video. Of course, is it alive? Do you think it's alive? It's moving, isn't it? It's all, but look at this. That's a person over there, okay? Of course, we have the living thing over here. That's a baby. And the baby is being given a non-living thing. He's very happy with the teddy bear, right? Of course, we don't be tricked. The teddy bear looks like it's moving, but it's not alive. It's just, it's a non-living thing. But it's interesting to note that living things, especially people, right? People will kind of think sometimes of non-living things as if they are alive, right? I'm sure this baby loves his teddy bear. He might give it a name. He might talk to it, but it's not living, right? It doesn't need food. It doesn't need water. It will never grow. This teddy bear will stay the same. Mostly. It might get older, right? It might get worn. It won't be as new as it was when they first bought it, but it's not going to grow in size. It's not going to eventually die. It's a non-living thing. Okay, let's talk about our reading skill chart here. Now we're talking about living things and non-living things, right? Living things versus non-living things. So it's very easy to compare and contrast. How are they different? Of course, our topic sentence is, nature has many living things and non-living things in it. Okay, so that's kind of how they are similar, right? Because they both exist in nature. However, how are they different? There's many differences between living things and non-living things. So we can look at the differences, we can describe them, and how are they different? Now, when we fill in these blanks, we only have 3 words or 3 phrases to choose from. Food and water is one choice. Grow is another. Alive is another. There's only 3, but we have 6 blanks. Well, if you notice, this says are, and this says are not. So that's showing difference. Positive, negative sentence. Okay? So positive sentence, negative sentence, A and D will be the same blanks. So let's take a look. All living things are what? As opposed to non-living things are not, right? So all living things are alive. All living things are alive. That's true, okay? All living things are alive. Because they are alive, what do they need to survive? They need food and water to survive because they're alive. That's what they need. Finally, they what and change? They grow and change. Living things grow, they get bigger, and they change. Part of growing is changing. Getting bigger is changing. So they grow and change. There's also, depending on the animal, they also change in other ways. Deer grow antlers, right? They grow horns out of their head. Male deer, right? So they change. They don't just get bigger. They also sometimes have a lot of different changes. A caterpillar changes into a butterfly. It's a big change. So it's not just grow bigger, they also change. Now, these are all what they do. Okay? This is what they do. They do these things. On the other side, they don't do these things. It's very easy. It's the same thing across. Non-living things are not alive. They don't need food and water to survive. And they do not grow or change. So we can see the differences here. All living things are alive. Non-living things are not alive. Living things need food and water to survive. Non-living things do not need food and water to survive. Living things grow and change. Non-living things do not grow or change. So those are the differences, right? We're just talking positive and negative. Using the same words, we can describe the differences between living things and non-living things. Okay. Okay, let's move on to our reading comprehension questions. We have question number 1. Non-living things are not what? A, survive, B, alive, or C, safe. Now look at the sentence here. Non-living things are not. Then we're describing non-living things. The word form, or the type of word that we use to describe something, is an adjective. Adjective. Right, slowly. Adjective. So non-living things are not. We're looking for an adjective because an adjective will describe what these things are not. We're looking for a descriptive word, an adjective. Number A is survive. B is alive. C is safe. Which ones are adjectives? B and C are adjectives. Survive is a verb, so that doesn't fit. Verb. So we can't use survive because grammatically it doesn't fit in the sentence. So we have to choose between alive and safe. Non-living things are not alive. Well, of course, that's the right answer because they are alive, they're living, and this is not. Okay, so non-living things are not alive. They are not living. They are not alive. They are not living. That's correct. But look at C. Safe is also an adjective, right? Non-living things are not safe. Well, that doesn't make sense because, non-living things don't care about being safe or in danger, right? If you look at a rock is not in danger or safe, right? Doesn't care. Non-living things don't have to worry about staying alive. They don't have to worry about surviving. So they don't care about being safe or not safe. It's silly to say non-living things are not safe. What does that mean? It's more appropriate to say that non-living things are not alive. They're not living. Okay, number 2. What helps people to grow and survive? And remember, people, that's an example of living things, right? They're an example of animals. So what helps people to grow and survive? And not just people, but also animals and plants, all living things. What helps them grow and survive? A, water and food. B, rocks and fish. C, an unsafe environment. Well, of course, we learned already that water and food are 2 of the things that all living things need to grow and to survive. Water and food, and of course air, but that's not there. We don't need to. We're just looking at what helps. 2 of the 3 is enough. So water and food helps people to grow and to survive. Rocks and fish? Well, fish can be a type of food, but do we need rocks to survive? No, we don't need rocks to grow and survive. That's kind of silly. So B wouldn't be correct. And C, an unsafe environment. No, remember I was talking to you, I made the point several times, we need to keep our environment clean. We need to keep our environment clean. We need to keep our environment safe. If we have a clean environment, if we have a safe environment, then that we can survive. But if it's unsafe, not safe, then that will not help us to grow and survive. In fact, it might cause us to die. So we need to take care of our environment. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3, living things grow. Living things grow, but, now we're looking for opposition, an opposite thought because of but. But mammals and reptiles do not. Is that true? Living things grow. Mammals and reptiles are living things. So this contradicts each other. Living things grow, but mammals and reptiles do not. That contradicts each other. Obviously, A is not correct. What about B? Not living things grow, but non-living things do not grow. Is that true? Of course, that is true. B is the correct answer. Let's take a look at C for practice. Living things grow, but the environment can never change. That doesn't make sense, right? Because the environment does change, right? The environment can change in terms of weather. The environment can also change in terms of type. Valleys can become mountains. Oceans can become plains. So the environment does change. So that's not correct either. The environment is always changing. Number 4, what does nature have in it? So that was our topic sentence, right? When we looked at the reading. What does nature have in it? And we saw that there are two different things that we're talking about exist in nature. Let's go over the answers. A, non-living and living things. B, only living things like mammals. C, only non-living things. Of course, if you chose A, you would be correct because nature has non-living and living things in it. That was our topic sentence, the very first sentence. And that's what we are talking about in this lesson. Living things and non-living things. They both exist in nature. So nature has both non-living and living things in it. Not B, only living things, no. And C, only non-living things, no. It's both non-living and living things. So both things. Okay, let's move on to our chart. We've seen this chart before. Let's take a look. We need to fill in the different labels for the chart, okay? We have the differences between living things and non-living things. So over here we have pictures of flowers, type of plant, an animal, and a tree, another type of plant. These things are alive. These things grow and change. These things need air, food, water, and space. What are they? Of course, they are living things. Over here, we see a picture of rocks. We see a picture of clouds, air, sky. We also see a picture here of a statue or a monument. Of course, you could say it's rock too, but it's a very big rock. It's a carved rock like a statue. So these things are not alive. They never grow. They're not going to get bigger. They never need air, food, or water. So what are they? Of course, they are non-living things. Okay, so this unit, lesson 2, was mostly about the differences between living things and non-living things. How are these two groups different? And we've talked about living things. We are living things. Animals and plants are living things. We all need air, food, and water to survive. We also need space, of course. We grow. We change. Non-living things are not alive. They don't grow. They don't need food, air, and water to survive. They just exist. And all things exist in nature. Okay, well that wraps it up for this lesson. Hope you've learned a lot. As usual, we'll see you guys next time. Take care.